and welcome to the ninth episode of Keen Minds and our first hiatus episode. I am Jen, aka Takata Saiko,
And I am Tessa from Criminally Sane.
and we are diving into our hiatus episodes today. We're going to be going in and touching on all the difficult moments. Our first episode that we're going to be touching on is actually going to take a look at Red and Tom and just how far they've gone. And once we started looking at it, Tessa has definitely proved me wrong when I said that Red has not had a lot of character growth. It's all been with my favorite, Tom.
It has been. It's because you expect it with Liz, but once you see it with Tom, it's right there. I mean, it's just right there.
And I think that that's one of my issues that I had with him, is that I was looking for the growth there with Liz, with treating her like an adult, like understanding her, her reasons behind things. And it just flew right past me how he's changed with Tom until we started listing everything out.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, to me, just brought it home. As soon as I started looking at it, this is like, yes, there is a lot of change in Red, but it's just like snail pace. It's a look here and a little change there. You know, he's inching towards an acceptance. And I think that what most intrigues me about their relationship is that you gotta really look in retrospect to understand the roots of their distrust, the secrecy, the need for control, and all the deja vu that now we know Red was experiencing, which back then we had no idea what he was looking at Tom like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's really become apparent as Katerina's story has started to unfold, and since the diary was brought up, and we started to see the relationship between Red and Katerina coming about, and the fact that Red had to have been seeing a lot of his own pain that he
Mm-hmm.
went through with Katerina, is terrified that Liz is about to go through that and is about to be on the bad end of it. It's by that point she was already in love with him, but he's thinking it could only get worse from here.
That's what happened to me. I love Katerina, and look in the pain that I am. I don't have my family. I lost everything. I think that because we didn't know at the time what was been the story of Red and Katerina, we had no idea. Is that we tend to think, oh, it's because Tom was going to hurt Liz, and I don't think I didn't realize this is how he thought it was going to hurt her. It wasn't a physical hurt. It wasn't like, it was just simply at the end he's going to always be a spy, and she's going to pay the price.
He's going to choose the job over you in the end, basically.
Exactly.
I agree.
Exactly. And I think that the other issue there is that I think you've said it many times. Tom and Red have the same issue with control. They like to play people chess, and they can against each other.
I definitely agree there. I feel like in their world that they live in, control is something that they have to have. I mean, not just that they feel like they have to have, but they do have to have, because if you lose control against killers, they're going to kill you.
They're
So
dead.
that's where they come at that from. And they felt like they were on opposing sides because Tom wanted to be with Liz and Red wanted to protect Liz from what he thought Tom was going to do. And so in the end, they kept trying to control the situation, and honestly, both of them made it a little bit worse.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things is Red has a need for secrecy, which of course Tom does too because of the job. And Red, not only the job, but his world is about secrecy. He cannot let anybody know. And I think that a lot of people who hate Tom don't understand why Tom hates Red. And I think that is one of the first thing that maybe we should tackle is why is this the origin of this conflict between what Red wants, what Red presents to the world, and what Tom does. So to me, um, Red wasn't going to go to the major and say, "Listen, I have my daughter, and I need her to be looked after. So I need you to send me a operative, preferably one that will never fall in love with her. Because I tell you what, she's a daughter of the very famous Katerina Rostova, and every man fell in love with her. So it can't be that." So Red didn't do that.
Well, she is a vulnerability. He is aware of that. Like you've pointed out several times, one of many vulnerabilities. There's the word. But he's not going to broadcast that if he can help it, because that just puts a bigger target on her back than is already there.
Exactly.
So of course
So
he's not going to go and broadcast that to the major, to anybody else.
exactly. So I think that probably what Red said is, the way he said it to the post office. Oh, I don't know, if you're gonna have to find whatever's left of Agent Keen yourselves. I bet that his stomach was doing somersaults, but he wasn't projecting that. So for what did Tom felt, heard, was, oh, I don't know, make sure that she doesn't get hurt, look after her, don't get involved with her, and that's it. So if you're like this and then you fall in love with this woman, and I'm sure that Red didn't call him and say, "Hey son, why did you get close to her?" He probably sent somebody to guard him or run over him with a car, or any of those nice little gestures of telling, "I don't like what you did."
I think I've mentioned before on the podcast, and I know I have on Tumblr and such, that I am convinced the non-deer blood on the vehicle that they talked about in season 2, when
Was a little
was more of an individual's
pressure.
blood that tried to come after him that read a message, just like
Yeah.
Zamani, and I'm sure there were others, and I'm sure at some point Tom started sending them back in body bags, bit like Jesse with his neck tattoo.
Tattoo, nice
I
tattoo.
mean, Red wasn't phased at all by that, so that was probably not the first message Tom had sent back in return.
Exactly. So I think when you put that in perspective, this is so when Tom falls in love with Liz and Red fires him, what does Tom think? Well, obviously, this guy is using Liz, and now he fired me. And when Berlin comes at him in whatever way that happened, he's probably thinking, this poor woman that I'm falling in love with, it's in the middle of these two men coming at each other, and neither one of them is a nice man.
I imagine he probably thought that there was a good chance at the end of things Berlin was going to hurt Liz. And that was one of the reasons that he stuck around, was that he kind of this idea of, well, I know what's going on. I know what's going on Red's end, and I now know what's going on Berlin's end, so who's going to protect her if not me? Sort of attitude.
Exactly.
And whether he really believed that or he just, convinced himself of that, who knows? But I could, especially at that point in his life, he was very adept at lying to himself. Because honestly, I'm still to this day a little confused on how he managed to convince himself that just because Berlin had gone radio silent, that he was just going to get to live out the rest of his days as Tom Keen, the innocent 4th grade teacher married to his FBI wife without anything causing trouble. He had to have known at some point he was going to have to deal with this.
I imagine, because you've said many times, Tom is a guy who makes replaces a bad memory with a good memory. He just did that. It's like, well, maybe I just forget that I'm being paid nicely, and I like teaching, and I love my wife, and there it is.
Well,
And why did some man he got in and overpowered him?
now I think he got complacent. I agree. I mean, Red made the comment when they went after him, when he was under the cover of Christoph Mannheim. He said he becomes the person, and the fact that we've seen so much of the cover Tom Keen in Tom later, when we started to get to know him later in season 2 into season 3, and certainly in season 4 by this point, we know this is the man who he is at his core. He's learned who he is. Liz knows who he is. The audience has found out who he is. And there was a lot of that teacher there. It was just
Well,
shoved down, and he did his best to ignore that side of himself because, a sweet, lovable, dorky teacher Tom wasn't a killer, and he had to be a killer to survive.
yeah. And I think that if you think about all the people in the blacklist that have gone undercover, you'll find that all of them took a lot of themselves into the cover. Even Aram did it. I mean, Aram, sweet Aram, who has never done that, he's not trained for it. At the end, when push come to shove, he had to go and say something true. He's in love with someone else. So I thought that that was hilarious. So basically, we've covered Tom. Tom distrusts Red because Red is. It's not going to show his hand. Red distrusts Tom because it reminds him of Katerina, and he's not sure what he's playing or what's going to be the day that he says, "Hey, you know what? Not really in love with you. It's goodbye." And Liz is going to be left with the pieces of his heart, of her heart. And the inability of Red to simply kill Tom, something that definitely Rostov did not have it, um, made this whole situation into a lockdown because this is two men, one distrusting the other and convinced that the other one is there only to hurt and use Liz. So I think that once that is understood, we can really start to analyze the actions of both characters. That they both distrust and are afraid of the other one is going to hurt the woman they both love in different ways.
I agree. I definitely agree. And Tom was very new at learning to love her. And certainly in season one and up until little ways past the mid part of season two, he certainly wasn't loving her in a healthy fashion. And so a lot of times when I talk about Tom, it's not that he didn't love her in season one. He didn't know how to love her in a healthy fashion. He didn't know how to put her first. He knew he loved her. He knew he wanted to do right by her, but things kept getting in the way because he didn't know how to go about it. He had no solid ground to move from. The majority of people have at least someone in their life, even people that go through horrible situations, have at least one person in their life that they can have a kind of a compass towards that says, okay, this is how a good person is supposed to act. Tom really doesn't seem to have that. He was shuffled around too much. If someone actually did care about him in the system, then he didn't stay there very long for whatever reason. Probably didn't let himself believe anybody could care about him after a while. He was abandoned, unloved, unwanted, and then the Major picks him up, and that's the closest thing he has to a father. And we find out, that by 30, this guy is willing to put a bullet in his head because he went against him. And so that's the kind of basis he has to launch off of for love.
Probably the only thing that he got even, besides the Major was Gina. And it doesn't seem like Gina was exactly warm and fuzzy, even though at the very end, when she's at the car looking at him getting into the church, I think that she was finally feeling, some pain. But I'm sure that for her, that was like, whoa, what was that? Not sure what this feels like. But the definitely you're right on the money there for me. He's not someone who even knows how to care, how to love, has never been loved. So I do think, however, and this is where things are going to start getting interesting, is when we go into the Duff scenes, which we're not going to tackle this. We're just going to go on Red and Tom, because I do think more than you that Tom was a bit more aware of loving Liz than you think he was. I don't think that he put it in terms of love, but he put it in terms of, my original engagement was to protect this woman, and this is what I'm going to do, even if it means protecting her from the guy who hired me to protect her.
Oh, I agree with that. When I say that he didn't know that he loved it, I mean that I think he knew that he was. I always have a hard time putting this into words. Like, I know what it's rattling around in my head as. It's just difficult to
Mm-hmm.
put into words. It probably took him a while to come up with a word for it, for one.
Mm-hmm.
He probably had a hard time putting that emotion and admitting to himself that that's what it was. But I also think that while he loved her, and while he at some point realized that he loved her, because I mean, the man was willing to risk his life to marry her, to be with her. At some point, it had to click with him that that's what was going on.
Yeah.
But I think that the moment that he learned to love her in a healthy fashion and put her first was when he came back from Dresden. I think at that point is when you started moving into a healthy relationship, moving towards, at that point, a healthy relationship with the Keens. That's what I mean by that.
I even put it further than you. I think that when he came back on the boat, when he turned around and came back, that to me is the point where he is. It's about her, and when he realized that his dream and was not away from her, that the dream had to involve her for it to be a good one.
Well, I mean, it's a process that they went through,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge, huge, landmarker for it, and a big turning point. So, all right, do we want to start in with the back at the pilot with
Yay! Yes, yes. Yeah. Let's go.
All right. So the first interaction that we really see between, and granted, it's not physically the two of them, but it's Red sending his messenger of sorts. Was Zamani breaking into the Keen's home while Tom is cooking a celebration dinner because they got, that they got the yes, the go ahead
Mm-hmm.
from the adoption agency for a little girl, beats the hell out of him and then stabs him twice. And so that is Red's message, his kind, sweet little message to his son-in-law. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the place where we launch off from to begin our understanding of Tom and Red. And I think looking back that says so much. It really does. It's just that's both in where they've come from since and just the feelings they had for each other, because I mean I've heard people go back and forth on did Red want the money to kill him, did he not, this and that, but the thing is, regardless of what the overall intention was, the injuries that Tom sustained, the man was on a respirator in a drug-induced coma for days, according to Liz. He could have very, very easily died from that if anything had gone wrong, and Red would have killed him essentially. And I'm not entirely sure he would have felt bad over that. And so I'm torn now that I know that he purposefully chose not to kill him when they got married because Liz loved him. But he had to have known when he sent Zamani in there that the risk was there.
I think that Zamani went a little overboard. I think that because Red sent Zamani, and we know that he did because he asked Zamani, he's like, "How about the husband?" Like as you asked. But I don't think that Zamani was supposed to tell Liz that Red had an obsession with her. I think that was definitely not expected. And I don't think that he was supposed to hurt Tom that badly. I think all that Red wanted was a little bleeding and send a message, I am here and you better behave. And we have no idea what was exactly that was discussed. I would love to see that scene if they ever filmed it again, but I doubt they will.
You
But
mean between Zamani and Tom, or
oh
between?
yeah,
Oh, I
between
would
Zamani
too.
and Tom.
I would too, because I mean, he was cooking. We've seen the kind of knives that Tom cooks with, and we've seen what he can do. And granted, in the pilot, they couldn't,
Show
go
that.
exactly. Now there was a little moment in there in the pilot with him glancing over at Liz when Zamani was asking, demanding answers, and he kind of gave her this look like, don't say anything. That was the moment I went,
Mm-hmm.
you're not an elementary school teacher. But you're a little
Yeah,
more than that.
my first moment with that, knowing that Tom was more, was when he flashes the badge. To me, that was like, something about this doesn't quite jibe with the little teacher. But definitely, once it was tied in there, and you realize how complacent he got. And that has a nice parallel to when Red is taken by the kings of the road. Because, I mean, talk about hillbillies just taking the master criminal, just like that. Taking him, beating him up, and not even finding the money. I mean, it doesn't get more stupider than that. I mean, Red is a man who's always on the go. He hasn't, in 25 years, he hasn't been taken by hillbillies, and he does. Because he's happy. He's with Liz. He's telling her stories. Finally, Liz is not interrupting and not rolling her eyes so much at him. Um, so he seemed like heaven. He's finally getting to enjoy some time with his daughter. And
And
now it makes a lot more sense because he's like, well, he loves her like a daughter. But when we realize that he probably has never been even saying that she's his daughter, I mean, that is a pretty heavy thing.
not since she was 4 years old and he took her memories. I mean, that's...
Mm-hmm. That's some level of love.
Oh, gosh. It just breaks my heart now. All right, so we have that lovely, lovely intro with Red and
Introduction.
Tom.
And I love how that, gets Liz into the tiger, and she goes and she stabs Red. And I think that Red was counting on that because he could not have escaped quite as easily from the hotel as if the way he did it from the hospital, surrounded by people, with people coming in and out.
Well, I mean, Kirk made the comment in one of the last episodes, and I think it might have been the next to the finale. And then Red's talked about before how Liz is so much like Katerina, and I think if he was planning for that, he was banking on that. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably something very similar to something Katerina would have done, because again and again, Red has gone. You remind me of her, and you can
Mm-hmm.
do this. In whatever situation, whether it was before she knew about Katerina and he was just saying, you have more in you than you realize, just
Mm-hmm.
think it through, or after she found out and he's like, no, your mother was Katerina Rostova, you can do this.
And now you see a whole different meaning also when Red tells Liz, think like a criminal. Because, yeah, you get it on both sides, honey. You can do it.
No escape.
um, no, no. And then from there on, their second interaction is when Red realizes, okay, the stabbing thingy doesn't work. How about if we try introducing the lover? Um, and find Gina.
Oh, Gina. I love Gina. I hope Gina comes back in Redemption. I just want to put that out there right now. I want her to come back and work with him and him have to go home and explain to Liz that this is happening and he has no choice in it.
Um, but going from there is like, okay, so she finds, gives gives Liz Gina, and from there on is like she's Tom's lover, which wasn't true.
I was going to say, by the way, Red doesn't lie. Not accurate. Because he said she is Tom's lover. Present tense. He knew it. He knew they weren't sleeping together. And if he didn't, then he was not aware. He didn't know for sure that they were because they weren't at the time. I just
But I
mixed up
think
that
that,
sentence.
yeah, I think that he thought he knew because I mean, think about it. Why did he think he knew? Because probably Katerina did it.
That could be fair.
That he was, for him, Tom was Katerina.
So
And
do you think that he legitimately thought Tom and Gina were still having an affair?
yes, I think so. I think that I can make everything work with Tom, with Red not lying. I think that it's probably that's what he thought, not necessarily that he had a proof, but he has his emotional proof that Katerina, I have a feeling that Katerina did target Red, and he thought that she was not being a spy anymore, and she was. She was still having all this. I mean, she was described as a Pinko Matahari. She may have had a lot more men that she was seducing and getting information from.
Well, I mean, you have the lines from The Fire where he's saying, were you spying on me? And she said, I was protecting you, or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so yeah, we know that she was spying on him to some extent. Her journal said the same thing. Red said it. It's been confirmed on several different levels that
Mm-hmm.
she was sleeping with him, she fell for him, but she was still spying on him. I mean, and Tom did the same thing for a while. And Liz made the comment in one of the recent episodes that, you know, it was a very similar situation.
Mm-hmm. And I think the Red finally realized that Katerina loved him, because he tells Liz, it pains me to say that she was the only woman, um, that she was the only man that she loved. But I think that realization may have taken 26 years for him to come there. But I don't think that in the time, all he was seeing in Tom and Liz was the same situation, and Liz's heart being broken, and the child they were going to adopt ended up in God knows where or under what situation. So Red must have been in. Now it's so much easier to understand where Red's coming from in terms of Tom and in terms of Liz and the need to intervene in her life, in a way that is like, but she's an adult. Yes, but Red is dealing with his own demons there. It's not just about Liz. This is Red dealing with his life and the wreck of that relationship in his life. To
And
me.
he's projecting a lot, I think,
Mm-hmm.
with Liz, and because of what he's gone through. And so while he's trying to protect her, he's also projecting his own issues on it.
Mm-hmm. And then we basically take a little time off from them, and they come back, and we get the first encounter when Red kills Sam. Tom is hurrying there. Tom must have been told by Sam or told by Aunt June. Although I have a feeling that Aunt June was like a caretaker, making sure that Sam stayed in the narrow path and not get fancies.
I've made the comment before, but I think that Sam knew who Tom was. I think that he had enough of a past that he could spot it. And I think that they sort of had an understanding. I think Sam knew Tom better. He didn't have Katerina's shadow,
We
distract.
think.
Well, I don't know. Maybe she slept with Sam too.
That would be fun.
Poor Liz.
Say that it was. Did I say this is not a soap opera?
Tessa, stop trying to make this into a soap opera.
No. Well, it's a spy thing, and she was a honey trap.
Yep.
But yes, yeah, I think you're right that Sam either knew and they had a conversation, or he just knew, and he could gauge that Tom really loved Liz. Um, and I think that Sam called him, and I think that first startled look that we see when they get in the he opens his eyes and sees Red in the room, and he looks startled and almost like either afraid or guilty. I think that's what that's about. It's
He
about,
he
don't you
expected to
think?
he expected to see Tom instead.
Yeah.
It
And
makes sense.
oops. Yeah. Oops.
I still want to know, like, as many AU fanfics as I write, as many plot divergent fanfiction pieces as I've written, I still don't have an answer to this, and that's the only reason it has not been written. But I want to know what would have happened if, while Red was in there, about to put the pillow over Sam's face, if Tom had walked in. He was an hour late. What if he'd caught an earlier flight?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what... Would Tom have stopped him by force? Was he so deep in his cover that he wouldn't have? I mean, he would have recognized him, obviously, because he recognizes him outside. I mean, what would have happened? The closest I've come to a response for that is I think he would have called for somebody, but it would be
Or
really
tried to
interesting.
use it, or tried to use that situation to his advantage. Because Tom, like Red, they had to survive. Um, I don't know that I may have gone to a very interesting place because then they would have had to, openly talk about what's going on. And maybe Red would have said, you can't, I cannot let this spill to Liz at this moment.
Yeah,
Or Red would have just killed Tom.
that wouldn't have worked. I'm sorry, I would be against that scenario.
Yeah, I think that either way. For some reason, those two are so similar that they're um, similar and stopped by one stumbling block. They both truly, really love Liz. And that is what creates the tension. And those are, I always said, this is where you're going to see the character growth in Red. So that takes us to, well, they have that lovely conversation outside.
And they do. That is still to this day one of my favorite Tom and Red scenes. There's so much underlaid under that conversation. It's wonderful. It really is. I'm just thinking back to it.
The threats, and Tom is, I mean, they both keep in cover. They're, Red is being a charming man sitting, having a coffee when outside a hospital, all sad, and their conversation get nothing. If somebody had been listening to them, they would not have got anything out of there.
No, and
Just
it's so funny how just Red's reactions. Oh, really? That's so sad. It's like you're just sitting there going, really? You're laying it on a little thick there, dude.
Mhm. But it was perfect because, I mean, think about this. Red has no idea if Tom is there followed by somebody, if he's walking into a trap. I love that. And then Tom is, you can see that little thing in his eyes that he does when he simply switches and says, well, my wife is going to be devastated. And he's just right there threatening Red back.
Oh, I mean, he's basically going, I know why you're here. I know what you've done. Sam is dead and you walk out of that hospital. I'm not an idiot. You have just devastated Liz. And it's the conversation later, and I'm sure we'll touch on it more in depth, but when he says, I was terrified. It was the first time I'd seen you, and you were just this shadow looming before, but all I could think of was that you're the one that hurts Liz the most. And going back and watching that scene from season 1 is just amazing to see that, because you see the fact that he does love Liz. He doesn't always know how to express that love, but he does love her desperately and wants to protect her from this dark world that he knows and that he knows is going on, and he just desperately wants to protect her from that, including Reddington at the time, because he's convinced that there's something bad
Red
there.
is using, Red is using Liz. And I think that conversation is one of the pivotal moments in their relationship because Red obviously hired Tom. He's never seen Tom. And now they're face to face after he got fired by Red. And there it is, and he's threatening him. And Tom may have been terrified, but he does threaten him right back. She's going to be devastated. And I know what you did, and I can probably prove this. And at the first opportunity he has, he goes back to for the interview and takes a picture, and probably goes to the hospital and takes that picture and bring it back and leaves it for Liz because he knows what's going to happen, and he knows he's going to have to prove to Liz that Red is not the man she thinks he is.
I think the day that Zamani showed up, Tom knew that it was about to unravel. And especially when Liz found the go box. Like, when he knew that Red was there, he knew Red wasn't leaving. He knew that his perfect life that he had landed in, that he didn't know that he had always wanted, kind of thing. I think he started seeing the writing on the wall there. And so that's why he set these sort of things up, because he was trying to protect her from him.
Yeah. And he says that he was thinking, you're the one hurting her. Do you think that Tom started to get a feeling there that Red was Liz's father?
I think at some point he did. I don't know when. It's hard to say, because when you go back to all the daddy jabs, I always joke that there's no bigger daddy gator than Tom Keene, because he makes so many jabs about it. And the first one he makes is towards the end in the
117, yeah.
Yeah.
119, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say with the brothers, when he's
Yeah.
delivered
119.
into the
Yeah.
the dining room,
Yeah.
and he says, "What, is Daddy gonna come make me talk?" And at that point, I don't know. Maybe he was fishing for something, but he was also just trying to piss her off, because anger's a lot easier to deal with than hurt.
Thank you. Yes, it is. It is. And it's something that Tom Keene was pretty good and pretty adept at seeing. That's probably one of the emotions he knew rather well.
Yep.
Anger. Because I imagine that when he made mistakes, Bud was not like, "Oh, don't worry, pal, I love you."
No,
You know,
no.
uh,
I can imagine he ended up with a few bruises of his own over the years from
because you got to
recruiting.
prepare. I mean, if you make a mistake, you're gonna be dead.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk any more about that meeting at the hospital?
We could go on
Both
all
with a
night
little
about
coffee.
we could go on all night about that one. Let's go
Yeah,
to the next
he's
point. So,
uh,
when I guess that's the next point we have on here is when Red tells Liz that he knows little more about Tom than she does. But honestly, I think it would be, well, he doesn't really talk to her a lot when.
yeah, because in between that and
Yeah.
the moment that Liz finds out that we have all there's a lot of things happening between Liz and Tom and between Liz and Red, but they have basically stopped saying. He says, "Well, be careful of your husband," when he leaves after Anslow Garrick. We have a lovely moment, Liz and Tom in Anslow Garrick, when they're on the phone, but really there is not much that that they go through until Liz finds that out and says, "What do you know about Tom Keene?" And Red says, "Not much."
And that's the one that I always go back to when I say that just because I don't always trust Red at his word. One, because he manipulates words, but that one right there. You said that you could defend him on anything and say that he tells the truth. What about that one? I want to hear your defense on that one, because that's always
Okay,
my go-to.
that is a little threadbare. I gotta say, yep. But I mean,
Because, granted, you could say that he had a lot of theories and there were things that he wasn't sure of at that point, but the fact
I
that he
hired
hired
would have
him.
been one thing. Yeah, I hired this guy. That would have been a pretty big one to say. But I always go back to Red is always going to try to protect Liz. And I think that at that moment, he was terrified that had he said that, Liz would have said, "Excuse me, get out of my life. I don't ever want to see you."
She would have done it. She did it the next season when she found out, when Tom told her, give me the courtesy of a yes or no. Yes, I hired Tom Keene. Okay, can I explain? No. Walks off. The
Exactly.
only reason she
Exactly.
came back was because they shot him, in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And no, and then he's doped up, about to be taken to the hospital, and she still won't let him explain much.
Yep. It's like, "I'll save you," but that's because you're going to go in a box for the rest of your life.
Oh,
Because I will, no, she did put him in a recanted they working with him, so they were going to take him and put him in a box, and she was absolutely fine with that. As he told Dom later, she has your temper.
She does.
So
She definitely has down Katarina's line, I think. I'm just well, I mean, Red doesn't really have a temper per se. His tends to be very
he's a chess player. He doesn't have a
yeah.
temper.
It's he doesn't go off the hilt on things.
Mm-mm.
That I think that's why Kate was such a big thing when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was so emotional. But Tom and Red, Tom and Red,
Tom, he gets into
focusing.
yes, he makes his daddy jab in when he said, and I always heard that one being ironic. Um, I think that he is starting to think it might be possible, or maybe Tom thought that whoever had hired Berlin or whoever had told Berlin, or Berlin has said, this is woman. I wonder if Berlin knew that Liz was Katerina's daughter, and the reason he wasn't thinking of hurting her, whether Tom thought that or not, was because he was KGB. Katerina supposedly was KGB. I don't know that hurting Liz was in the works, or he simply it may have been, or it may have been that he was just protecting Liz. I read something like ironic, like, yeah, you think you're the daughter, yeah, right. You just kill her father, and I can prove it to you that he's not who you think he is.
Well, I think I don't like I said I don't know exactly when Tom started because I do think by season 1 finale when he thought he was dying, I think that he thought Red was her father. So I'm not sure when that idea, and it might have just been something he'd been kind of playing with, and then as he's dying, it's like
Mm-hmm.
this is the only thing that makes sense. Let me tell you this.
Yes,
But
that could be.
and I agree that I think that was more of just a jab than anything. Of is Daddy gonna come make me talk?
And it was great because he brought Liz into the anger. It brought Red into the situation. Um,
But I think that
it's the first time they actually talk about Red. I mean, because before Red, he couldn't acknowledge that Red was in the picture. He was like, he's playing dumb. This is the first time that he can say, "Well, Daddy's gonna come," and it may be very well that he knew that he suspected that Red was her father. But at this point, even knowing that, I think that he still suspect that Red will use Liz, and I think that he thinks that Red will hurt Liz if necessary.
well, I think it goes back to again how Tom views
That,
family because he was not raised with anybody that would put him first. He did not until he became a father himself. I don't think he understood that. I think it took holding Agnes in his arms to go,
hmm
this is it. This is what this is
yeah,
supposed to be. I like
yeah.
until he had Agnes physically in his arms, I don't think he understood that he saw fathers as Bud, as any of the foster fathers that he had that were bad to him,
If you're
as
useful, you're okay. If you're not useful, I don't have any use for you. I can put a
exactly.
bullet in your head, or you can go and be hungry. If you need to eat, go find, steal something to eat, which is what Bud basically tells him. Um, it was a very it was a great scene in that sense that it brings that the Tom and Liz finally about Red. It's the first time they can acknowledge that there is something about that they're talking about Red. Before in his cover he couldn't know. And he obviously had been planned for this for a long time because he has left this in the bank, and Red tells him he had been in the bank, so that's when he put that picture in that bank before knowing when he thought his life was about to unravel, because he goes to the bank, then he goes to make his next drop at the book, already knowing that this is ending. So he was making everything ready for when he left. He was probably going to leave a little note, go to the Radford Bank and take a look at this picture. and it has his symbol.
Yeah, and which is very interesting. We still don't know where that comes from because it's looking less and less likely that it's Saint Regis.
I think it is. It is a personal thing.
It
It
might
may
be.
have been that when he was taken, that box was with him,
I'm kind of
or
wondering that
something with that symbol.
if it was a box of toys or something like that that was taken
Hmm.
with him,
Hmm.
and so.
To keep him quiet or
Mhm.
something.
Well, I mean, remember
But
when Solomon took
yes,
Dende's little granddaughter?
yes,
You know, are we
we're
gonna
taking
take
Mr.
Dinosaur or Mr.
Bean.
Panda? Mm-hmm.
Yes, there you go. Exactly. So something like this, and they took this toy, or something that had that symbol, and that something stayed with him, and then eventually he carved it into a box. Something tells me that symbol is Tom's, and the idea that is tied to this, it might not be. It might just be a red herring that they've thrown our way. I don't know. They might still bring it together, but to me, that symbol is Tom.
I do think so, but I'm hoping it's not a red herring because it's just too similar and it's been going on too long, and the scar is too important for it to be a red herring. I personally think, but we'll see. We find out when it shows up on on the screen,
Yeah.
and I
And
think we'll
then,
find out a lot with Redemption coming up.
yeah, I think so. Then the next time they actually meet is when they gun to the head scene. And I mean, that is going to warrant a big part of a podcast on its own. But I think that we can touch on some things in that here. And I think that the one that really gets me is he could have killed Red. Red had put his gun down. At that moment, Tom had time to shoot Red to death and shoot Liz had he wanted to, or shoot Red and leave,
Yeah,
push
absolutely.
Liz out of the room or into the room and run out.
Yeah, I mean,
And just,
this man's 6 foot. You know, what was it they said? 180 soaking wet, but still, he's bigger than Liz. He can obviously overpower Liz if he needs to, and you know, he's got her at gunpoint. He takes the shot at Red. We've seen that he's a good shot. It's not like
mm-hmm,
he's a bad shot or anything. He clips him. Of all the things, he
mm-hmm,
that had to have been a decision being made
mm-hmm.
there. And I that's another reason I think that at that moment he thought Red was
Yes,
her father. That
yes, you're
whether
right.
it's
Yep.
a you deserve to be her father, I don't think that's the decision, but like you have been taking all of her decisions away from her. I'm not going to take this one from her. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation. And I mean, whether he thought about that consciously, probably not, because I mean, in half a second time, he's pulling the trigger. So he had to make that decision. But if you think about it, his instinct should have told him, kill this man, put the threat down, and then handle everything else. He is a
Exactly.
threat to your life. And in the end, it nearly cost him his life because Liz wrestled the gun away and then shot him 3 times.
Mm-hmm. And I find interesting that we've had already uh we have how many characters have clipped another? We've had Red, Tom do Red do um Scotty. Didn't we get one recent?
Kirk with Red.
Yes, and then Kirk does Red.
Mm-hmm.
So this is obviously becoming a theme of the characters that graze another character on purpose, which is, Rostov wasn't that bad a shot, and yet he only clipped Red. So there was something in his subconscious that he wasn't ready to kill Red, and there was something in Tom that was a conscious decision. I'm not going to kill who I think is the father of Liz. And I think for a man coming from Tom's background, this gotta count for something. This is this is huge for him. He didn't put down the threat. He could have. Ren had put the gun down, and he could have killed him.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's every instinct, every trained go-to that he should have had that was deeply
Mm.
ingrained in him. This is your survival. He worked against it in that moment, and it did nearly kill him. And so, but I think that that's part of him
Exactly. It almost
changing with
killed him.
Liz.
Hmm. I think that in that moment they both put Liz down first. Not their hatred, not their fear of each other, not their distrust of each other. The most important thing was do not hurt Liz by, and Red was at that moment ready to kill Tom. I think you like that idea that Red would have killed Tom in that moment for sure. I am not so sure about that.
I think that Red wanted Liz to give him the go ahead. Like, I mean, when Liz said no, obviously he wasn't going to do it. But I think that he wanted her to be okay with him putting Tom down. I don't think that he would have ever asked her to do it herself. He was okay if she wanted to. But
Mhm.
he wanted her to be at that place where she was willing to move past it. Which is funny because I don't think he ever would have been able to kill
Ex-
Katerina.
Exactly. Now you're getting to her going.
So I
You
I
know?
think that it was kind of one of those moments like we were talking about with him projecting being be stronger than I was. Be stronger than I was and end this now.
Or alternative, he did know that Liz would not kill him, but wanted to give her the choice. And in that, you don't think that actually Red knew that Liz had not killed Tom? I think Red knew the entire time that Liz had saved him, and Liz was keeping him prisoner. And sometimes it gets me like this little. I do wonder if Red did something like that. Um,
It'd be
if
interesting.
keep her prisoner, or when he took Liz from her, that's what he was doing. It was a way of taking control of his life, of the lies that he had been told. I don't know that there's something there, when he says he goes to the gun. Red generally doesn't go to the gun and talk. She goes to the gun and shoots. There was, it's like, oh, maybe he makes a couple of funny things just because it's so much fun to kill people with humor. Like, oh, it's the suspense is killing me. Yet he doesn't do that. He just he goes to her, takes a gun, points it at him, and looks at Liz. And Liz tells him, no, this is between him and me. So I think that that's what he wanted her to go. In a way, I always go back to this kind of choices with Red, that he says if you nurture the child and taught the child. But Red only taught her and nurtured her when she was 4. So in a way, I think that what he's been doing since he crashed into her life, is continuing her education for the life that she's going to have. She's never going to have the picket fence, the ones with machine gun nests, maybe, but without them, she's not having this. She's gonna have to deal in this spy and thing. And so having that makes that's the kind of choices that educate you. Are you going that makes you decide who you really are? Like he says, I wasn't the man, I was a different person then. They've made different choices. So I think that for him, this is one of the moments. This is a teachable moment. What are you gonna do in this?
And it goes back to Liz has to find out things on her own. So yes, that makes sense. What are your thoughts when Red walks up with the gun and Tom's sitting there on the floor bleeding out and Red puts the gun up to his forehead? He leans into it. Do you think he's daring him to do it? That he what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think Tom was I think Tom in a way knew that Red was not gonna do it. I think that he read that, because if he had done it, if he had wanted to do it, he would have done. I think Tom was ready to die. Tom knew that he was dying. And when he got a few minutes and they're both alone, I think Tom wanted to tell what he had seen in that scene. And what he had seen in that scene is, he's your father. But I don't think that he had the guts to go against Red by saying Red is your father, and she would never have believed him. And had he survived that, and he had said that, I think he had a pretty good idea. Even if I survive this, I won't survive Red.
Right.
I think that everybody who knows Red got an opinion on, there is some lines here, like Kate. There is some lines here. Do not cross them, and this is one.
I agree. All right, so moving into season 2. And so I guess the next time they run into each other is actually when Red and Wrestler show up in Dresden, isn't it?
Yes.
Because he doesn't
before this, no, he doesn't.
Does not see him in the boat.
Nope. He doesn't see him in the boat. I think he knows he's in the boat. I think he has a pretty good idea. Maybe not in the boat, but he knows that Liz has him somewhere.
I was going to say, because when he showed up, when he saw what Liz was trying to scrub down on her own, the look on his face, the expression, I don't think he knew it was that bad. I think that he had suspicions that she'd saved him and that she'd been maybe even keeping him, maybe even that Tom was willingly staying with her, and exactly what you just said, playing house. But
because it's what he says.
But I don't think that he expected that level of darkness from Liz. I think he miscalculated how much pain she was in and how badly she would need to take control of the situation.
Yeah. I think that moment for the relationship of Red and Liz, and we will touch down on that when we do that podcast. That is a pivotal moment when Red realized where she's gone, how far she's gone. But I think that yes, he does not see Tom, but I think what Red sees that it will inform his opinion and his actions towards Tom when he goes to Dresden, is that she wasn't playing house. Tom was a prisoner in that boat. Oh, I forgot that. He does see him when he pays him off or gives him whatever it is.
You're right.
But yes, so he calls him, he goes in there, and to me that is the one scene where I see that for the first time Red is not talking to an operative. Don't see her again. Red is talking to a man in love.
He's talking to the ex-son-in-law. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that is it. I mean, he's recognizing there that that not playing house, Tom was tied in a filthy boat after being shot in the stomach for 3 times, and that Liz had been shackling him to the floor. This is darkness on her, unimaginable to him. And this is also a testament on that I think gets Red an appreciation for that Tom is first a man who values loyalty above all else. Tom did not rat him out. Liz has no idea that he hired him. And that Tom is willing to walk away from that, and that when he sees him, you're not going to see him again. You can see that there is pain in the eyes. And I think that for Red, that is the first time he realizes there's love here, and the situation is far more complicated than I thought it was, to me.
No, I agree. I think that was a very telling scene. And it wasn't so much anymore that Liz was in love with him, so that's why the situation was complicated, but both ways, just like you just said. I mean, that's
yeah, that's a scene. That's
a good scene. How did we forget that one?
I don't know. It's so telling. And Liz is on the car, and I think that I don't know if she's there, but it makes it look like she's there looking at Tom going. I mean, it's once you have the revelation that Red is really her father, it's like, yes, that's what you saw. There is a man that is going to pay off the no good husband that the daughter doesn't like anymore, and he's telling her, I know you're in love with her, but you cannot see her again.
Yeah. Do you think Liz, like, because I mean, she was in the car outside, but do you think she saw him walking in?
I think so.
It looked
Because
like it.
yeah, I think that scene, the fact that Red at that moment doesn't put a bullet in Tom's, that at that point, Liz obviously wasn't happy. He was not protected by her love anymore. And obviously, after keeping somebody in a boat for 4 months, you're obviously not in love with them, or if you're in love with them, it's kind of sick love. And yet he doesn't kill Tom.
I think she, because they say that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
Mm-hmm.
I think she loved him and hated him at the same time. I think she buried how much she still loved him under that hate and did the
Mm-hmm.
best she could to ignore the love and focus on the hate. Because, like we were talking about earlier, the anger is an easier emotion to deal with than the hurt.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you: do you think that at that point, if Red had killed Tom instead of giving him a passport, whatever it was that he gave him, um, Liz would have been okay with it, or Tom or Red would have thought that she would have been okay with it? In other words, did Red not kill Tom out of Liz love for Liz, or because in a way he realized that Tom had loyalty, what he admires?
No, I think he did it for Liz. Whether Liz would have been able to articulate and be able to admit to herself that she was upset, I think she would have had very complicated emotions if Red had just put a bullet in Tom's brain, because she stopped him when he was going to. And this is right after everything. This is right
Mm-hmm.
after Tom had a gun to her. As far as she knew, he was just an operative using her at that point, and she
Mm-hmm.
still saved his life. And I know that she told him in the boat, I need information from you. This is not because I care. It was a load of bull. I mean, everybody saw it. Well, not everybody. I hate sweeping
Mm-hmm.
comments like that. To me, it was blatantly obvious that it was the lady doth protest too much. I
Mm-hmm.
think that if Red had taken him around back and put him down, I think that Liz would have continued in a dark place. I think she had to deal with what happened and move past it. And she had two ways of doing that. If he had died, she never would have moved past it.
Mm-mm. No,
Like, he
she would
told
have
her that
been
in the boat. He said, if you kill me, we are linked forever.
basically what happened to Red.
Yeah. And I think that she would have just continued going darker and darker and darker. And in the end, the forgiveness and choosing to move forward is what has brought her back around, is one of the many things it has. And so I think Red probably had a clearer view of that than Liz did, because Liz was just far too close to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's why he didn't kill Tom, is because he knew there was a good possibility of that. I mean, she still... A lot of people made the comments. I think that, well, yeah, Red did in the boat. He said, that's what love is not having control. And so he admitted that Liz still loved Tom in those moments
Mm-hmm.
on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
When she was letting Tom go and cutting the ankle bracelet off, Wrestler makes a comment. He goes, well, you're not in love with Reddington.
Mm-hmm.
People around her saw that she was still in love with Tom, and that's why she hadn't been able to let him go, that she hadn't been able to let him die. It's why she hadn't cut him loose any earlier. She was struggling desperately to deal with those emotions.
Yeah. Well, at that point, she had no idea that love was involved in any of
No,
it.
she didn't know until he walked back from Dresden. He walked in, and that was the utter shock on her face when he walked in then. And that's the next point on our notes, because we're getting more into Tom and Liz there than
Mm-hmm.
Red and
Yeah.
Tom. And
But
But when Red went to Dresden after him, took Wrestler, went to Dresden, broke up his op, and I just love it that he rolls down the window and is like, "Hello, guten Tag." What is it? It wasn't even guten Tag. Guten Nacht.
Yeah.
Guten Nacht. I think I don't know, but I should know that one, but usually know that much. But and the when Tom was like, "I'm not coming back," he's like, "All right," and leaves because he knows that he's getting on a plane, and all he has to do is stop pushing. That as soon as Tom has 5 seconds to think about it on his own, he's gone. And not away, he's going to go save Liz, because that is all he can do. Because I think in that situation, as hurt as Red was with Katarina, and I have a sneaking you think he would have gone back to Katarina? I do too. That's in a heartbeat. And I'm wondering if we're going to find that out at some point. Because I'm with you on believing Katarina's alive and that Red knows now. And so I wonder if we're going to find out later that he had a situation in which he could save her, and he did. That no matter how hurt he was, he pulled a Liz, he pulled a Tom, and he went and he set himself and his hurt aside
and he became a sin eater. He even ate all her sins, I think. I think that one of the things that we haven't touched in that scene in Dresden is that is the first time that you see Red making a different story connection. This is the first time that he has acknowledged to Tom, that you're going to do the right thing. And this is the moment when Tom tells him, what do you care? You're just using her. And, he says, what do you care? And Red says, what do you mean? Or something to the thing, that actual words escaping right now. See, I'm not a steel trap. Something escape.
Pretty close. Certainly better than mine.
But he basically, that is a very pivotal conversation, and I think a lot of people are not very good at really understanding these two men when they talk, because they talk in a language that only they understand.
They're spies. They're spies.
He's saying, like, you care, and Red asks, what do you mean? Tom says, you're using her. You need her on the outside so you can keep your little task force running. And that is when things click for Red, because he already knows you're going to do the right thing. You're going to let a murder you commit for Liz, to save Liz, be the thing that brings her down. So we have a lot of information. We know now that Red knows that Tom is in love with Liz, that is not a cover, that he really loves her, and that he knows that murder he did of the one person who could have saved him was to protect Liz. It was a desperate, crazy act to protect Liz, but it was the only thing he could do, and he did it. And that to Red means he loves Liz, and he did this out of love. And then you were on a filthy boat, and you didn't give me up, and you didn't hurt her when you got out. So I know where you're standing. And this is, I think, when he tells Liz before that it was business, I think he really believed he was business. I think that it was the events on the boat and the understanding of the darkness that had been there that really convinced him, nope, it's love. It's not a job. So when he married you, when he was with you, he loved you. So I think that understanding that is the point where when Red start to understand where Tom is coming from. And that is the change, the enormous change.
A tiny little side note that I love to make, because I never see anybody else mention, so I kind of love to own it. That's the first time, and I think he's called her Lizzie once since. He calls her Lizzie to Red there when he's yelling at him, when he's got the phone up and he's screaming into the phone. He's like, no, when she dropped me in that hellhole, she gave up anything. I'm not going back. Lizzie did this to herself. And it goes back to, for me, when that video that he did with the adoption agency.
Yes.
Well, tell us about Elizabeth. Oh, she's always just been Lizzie to me. And And in that moment when he's and to me that says, in that moment when he was screaming at Red, when he's telling him, you only want to hurt her, you're using her, he is being 100% honest. Everything's out on the table. He's upset. He's lost his cool. That is him at his core. Whatever name you want to give to him at that moment, that is him putting everything out there because he's got nothing left to lose.
Exactly. So in that moment, you're seeing that Tom distrusts Red. So every single action that you're going to see, just remember that up until Red works on exonerating Liz, Tom thinks Red is using Liz. Yeah. And that is very important because it will inform the decisions they make about each other and the things they do about Liz and to Liz and for Liz.
Yes.
That's a great point.
And granted, I think he was lying to himself that he tried to convince himself that he wouldn't go back, but that lasted all of 5 minutes, until he was on a plane.
I think he was angry. And he's saying, I'm not going back. And then I think that Red breaking his cover was like, no, wait, no. I know how to break a spy because when you're in there, you become that person. But I have experience with undercovers. I'll break your cover and let you think again.
Yeah, I agree there. But to be fair, he had every right to be angry. Pissed as much right as Liz had to be pissed at him for what he did, she held him on a boat for 4 months and tortured him. I mean, if he had not been angry, then that
wouldn't have been normal.
That would be very bad writing. I'm sorry, there's not a soul in the world.
It wouldn't be normal.
He's not normal, but still, he's not a robot either.
Exactly. But it's interesting that Red just, of all the things he could do, Red usually doesn't leave things to fate or to, no, he generally, when he wants you back, he will take you back. And yet he doesn't. So that means that he had 100% surety that Tom was going to go there to get on the plane and go take the rap for Liz because he had killed the Ames because of Liz.
And I just love that Ressler's like, why did we come back? I don't understand. Why did we not drag him? Because that's what Ressler's thinking is, you're Raymond Reddington. Why did we not just throw a bag over his head and drag him back on your private plane?
Mm-hmm.
It's because Red knows. Because he's been there.
He's been there. He knows. Now we're seeing a lot of the things that made a lot of people hate Tom King because they weren't understanding where things were coming from, and now you're starting to see, yes, now it makes sense. It's not that Red didn't have his reasons to do it, but you gotta understand the reasons to understand the character he's doing it to.
It's really funny because I think a lot of fans that hate Tom for the longest time have thought Red knows something else about Tom, and that's why he hates him. And it's just like you said, we just found out about Katerina, and that is why he was looking at him in that light. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, they were focusing on, there must be some big secret they just haven't revealed yet. And that is what Red's holding on to. And it had nothing to do with Tom. Tom just happened to be a spy that fell in love with the woman that he was... Yeah, with his mark. And so it had nothing to do with the legitimacy on Tom's end of loving Liz. And everything to do with Red trying to work through his own emotions of the legitimacy of if Katerina loved him or not.
Exactly. So it's not about, it's as you say, it's not about Red knows a lot of things, but he's not omniscient. He's definitely not omniscient. He was working his own issues there.
And it humanizes him so much. I mentioned a while back on several podcasts ago that when everything happened with Kate, how angry I was, and like, I want to find something that makes me forgive him because I love Red. And I do. I hate being angry at him. It upsets me greatly. I have certain things that I'm used to being upset with him over, but it's just Red, so it's okay. You know, he gets a pass because he's Raymond Reddington.
Mm-hmm. He's charming.
Yeah, he's charming. He looks good in a hat and a vest. It's all right.
And he has a voice. His voice.
In which Tessa and Jen start fangirling over James Spader. Excuse us for a moment. Anyway. But, now you made me lose track. Oh my god.
That happens. I hate when that happens over James Spader.
James in the hat.
Yeah, I know.
Love a man that can wear a vest suit well.
Okay, so we were saying the reason why a lot of people hate Tom, is because they think, oh, Red knows something. There is something we haven't been told. And yes, there is something we haven't been told, but it's not about Tom.
Yes. That's what I think kind of came back around for me personally, is that it humanized him again. It's like there was so much that I didn't understand with the way he handled Kate, that it felt so against character for me that I feel like a lot of other things have fallen into place that I've been like, well, these will make sense someday. They finally make sense. And so, yes, Red is still a master chess player, but he makes sense to me now. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's brought him back around despite what he did to Kate. And his asking for forgiveness didn't hurt either. That wonderful scene. Oh my gosh.
That was. Then after that, he doesn't see Tom. Tom comes back, and Liz assumes that he brought Tom back so that he would then get she assumes it's Red who knew that they were going to shut down the investigation, but it wasn't Red. Red was perfectly happy to let Tom come back and go to jail. After all, you did kill him, pal. So now own up to it.
Well, what's the gift that floats around Tumblr? Cool motive, still murder. You know.
And it's still, you know, and he was perfectly fine with that.
And Tom was too. He made the comment to the judge. He said, I don't care what happens to me. I'm here for her. Just exonerate her, let her go, and then throw me in a hole, put me on death row. I don't care. I mean, it was like you said earlier. He was ready to die when Liz shot him. I think it just kind of got to the point for him that, like, as long as she is okay, then whatever happens to me, happens to me. And he was okay with that.
I think that his reason to, at that moment when he gets shot, he realizes his only reason to live at that point, he was tired, he was exhausted, he wanted out, and he was ready to die because he couldn't be with Liz. Well, what else was? He tried this didn't work, Dresden didn't work. He was ready to just, whatever, I don't care what it is.
I think Dresden proved to him that he could not do the job anymore. You know, the big capital, the job. I mean, yes, he can still go undercover, but I don't think after Liz he could ever do another deep cover mission that would last years, that he would be able to just, because as soon as he could have salvaged that. He's Tom Keene. If you need a job done right, call Tom. But he didn't. He got on a plane. He went back to Dresden. Liz broke him, you know, for lack of a better term. Liz broke him. Red called him defective merchandise. And that's something else that I think we should touch on briefly, is Red's conversation with Bud. Defective merchandise.
Because it definitely involves Tom.
Yeah, yes. I know we're kind of out of order here now, but so apologies to everybody, but that just popped in. But you've got that very enlightening scene in that horrible episode with all the flashbacks.
I loved it.
Really?
I think it's the most under-examined episode ever.
It's because it drove me nuts. It was such a filler. And, like, every show does that because they want to be able to bring people in and go, oh, look at our highlights of everything we've done. And that's what they do, and they have to do it for the casual viewers. But for people like me who've watched it 15 million times already, I'm like, I know. Yes. Oh, look, a new ex-ambassador song that I can't find and put on my playlist.
We did get some few items there that Liz thought he was her father. and because of the things that he knew, and we
And
did
well,
get little
we
snippets.
we got Tom's what Tom believed was his real name in that episode, Jacob Phelps, which was a very
Hmm.
interesting little cut. It was super brief, and the entire Keen Squared side of the fandom just went, put the brakes on, and went, hang on, what did he say? And for a very maybe few months, probably about a 6 month or more period, he was referred to on Tumblr at least as Jacob Phelps. We just all stopped calling him Tom Keen.
I didn't.
Well, you're one of the few. I had to retrain myself into calling him Tom again when he was basically like, I'm still Tom. I don't care. And I'm like, well, damn it. Could you make up your mind?
As I saw that he was still Tom Keen, I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. That's not your name either. You're not Jacob.
And I remember you saying that, and I was like, that's a stretch. They've given us the name. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. He'll get to Jacob, and nope.
Well, both Thomas and Jacob both have symbologies of twins.
Yeah.
So to me, that means that is not there's something about that name that is not right. So there's another thing. So, and then we get Christopher, who was the name of the fake brother, and they love to do those little name games.
But back on with the major, with the comment about the defective merchandise. I've always loved to hate that comment because it reminds me so much of when Bud tells the story of the dog and putting the dog down. People keep referring to Tom as if he's an animal, as if he's an object to be used. And I think this has been his entire life, that he has not been viewed as human. And I think that's a lot of his issues, is that Liz is probably one of the first people that's ever looked at him as a human being before. And he doesn't... That's going to screw with you. I mean, there's just no two ways about it, that's going to affect your psyche on a very deep emotional level.
You're good as long as you're useful to someone.
And that is exactly. And so...
As you'd like to say.
The comment about you handed me defective merchandise, I just remember sitting on my couch watching that episode and going, ouch.
Ouch.
Yeah, like, I mean, I know you didn't just say this to his face, but ouch.
I wonder if he felt at that point about Katerina like that.
And it might have been a bit of projection there. And I also think that he felt a little betrayed by Bud from the get-go, that I asked you for your best, and I
wanted a psychopath, and you handed me a normal person. What's wrong with you?
Exactly.
I want what I paid for.
Give me my damn psychopath. Come on. You got a whole school of them.
No emotions. It's perfect. I want my money back.
Yes, that sums up that entire scene right there. Thank you.
And I think that in that moment I haven't rewatched those scenes in the light of the revelations that Katerina was for Red, what Tom was for Liz. But I think that once you start watching all those scenes in which he's referring to Tom and talking about Tom, you realize the level of pain that Red endure with this. He talks to Liz about, for him it was business. You're waist deep in I think what is the word he uses in filth.
You're chest deep in waste. I think is what it was.
Filth or waste.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to go through it.
Yeah.
So basically, that is probably what Red felt, and the things about this, about that he couldn't see Tom. He was seeing Katerina.
Yeah.
He was seeing Katerina. What happened to him happened to his little girl, and he put him there.
Yeah. It was his fault.
It's all on me. This indeed is on me.
Yes. Oh, Red. Okay, well, I'm officially less angry at him because I've got certain little things that will continue to irk me about Red. They will until I find ways to get around them. And one of them was the conversation that he had where he told Liz that it was all business, and the fact that it's always really bothered me because people love to pull back on the I had sex with him the other night. Do you know how filthy that makes me feel? And I've always been very upset with Red that he let her feel that way.
I
But
don't think
after this
he
conversation, I think you're right. I think that it's not that he let her feel that way.
he
He
thought
thought it was
that.
true. Yeah, as far as he was aware, he was giving her accurate information, and he was trying to
Yep.
protect her in that. And I, for the longest time, I've seen it as a manipulation tactic, and I'm inclined to agree with you now that it was more of a he did not he had not seen that it was real yet for
No.
Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the boat made it real. And I think that eventually when he goes to talk to Aleko, I think Aleko tells him that Tom killed him because they were all going to jail. And I think that solidified for him it wasn't love. And I think that's why, without any other confirmation, he changes and tells her, he married you because he was in love with you. And I think that's when he goes to talk to Bud, he tells him it was because
Mm-hmm.
he was in love with her. So I don't think that he was lying. I don't think he was manipulating. That was his information, and that's what I always say. I love Red, but he's not omniscient.
And it's really easy to view Red in that fashion because he's so good at projecting that. Because he
Mm-hmm.
has to. I mean, he's the concierge of
Mm-hmm.
crime. He has to look like he knows everything and is aware of everything and never let them see you bleed, sort of thing. And it's easy as a viewer to get caught up in his charm, in the Raymond Reddington charm. And
Yep.
yeah, interesting. That's
Yeah.
hey.
And that takes us to the next interaction. The famous motel room scene. I love. Oh, we got the dreams, but the dreams
I
kind
don't
of
think the
don't
dreams.
count because they go. Those are Liz stuff.
Yeah, I don't count those because it's not really Tom and Red. It's all Liz's subconscious and trying to deal with those. So,
Exactly. So,
eh.
but there he is. He's asking for the passports, and Liz is telling him no. But as soon, he may tell no, I don't care. As soon as Red pulls a gun on him,
Oh, she's back to pilot episode of sticking the pin in his neck. I love that. That she's, get out. Get out. Opens the door. Red pulls a gun. She's pulling a gun and she goes, no. And this actually does need to go back to that dream because just very briefly.
hmm
Because when Red shoots Tom in the dream, when Dream Red shoots Dream
hmm
Tom, she goes
hmm
no, and so it's very similar to the little
hmm
gasping no she makes when he pulls the gun, and you can just see it when you rewatch those scenes back to back. She's
I
going,
did it.
it's
Thank you.
happening, because
It's true. I never thought about it.
it's the same motel room. Red pulls a gun and she's going, no, I'm not letting this happen. She positions herself between them and she pulls the gun on Red. And Dimbe's going, what the hell is happening? Behind Red.
Exactly. So I mean, wow, I had not thought that. Thank you.
Yay! We're
That
letting
is
each other in on all sorts of things this evening.
it's awesome. Yeah, see, there is so much, and the more you see that you find out of Red, the more you realize that you know he's a man, and he's a man who has known a lot of loss, and not the laws where they're dead, the laws where they're right there, but he can't touch them, he can't see them, he can't tell them, he cannot call and say, you know what, I really love you. He cannot even say that.
Which is almost worse. I mean, it's almost worse. It's painful. But just
There's
the
a
fact.
kid in a candy store looking in the window and not having the money to go in and buy anything. Or even worse, being intolerant of sugar. So it doesn't matter if anybody wants to give him the candy, he can't have it. It's it's a humanizing situation, as you say.
Ugh.
And then the funny thing about that scene is the next morning when finally he leaves, he says, you're the one who brought me back.
Oh, and I
Like
love that. Get out. I was out. I just so many times because I talk about quite a bit that Red, yes,
that
Red
yo-yo.
is he's a puppet master. He loves to just pull people in and take them out. He did it with Sam. He does it with Tom. Heaven knows how many other people have come and gone in Liz's life that he was completely in control of.
Hmm.
And and Tom's calling him on his crap finally and going, I was out and you just brought me back in and now you're done with me and so I get to go away now? Thanks. You
Yeah, it's
know?
yo-yo. It's yo-yo, and he's calling him on the yo-yo. You use people, and now I need you. Now I don't. Go away. Yeah, thank you for coming back. Go away.
And I think that that's Red trying to put distance between the human. We've talked about it with Wrestler and Tom before, that when Wrestler saw Tom with Agnes, it's the first thing that humanized him to Wrestler, and he started kind
Hmm.
of warming to him. And I think that when, and this is kind of a new theory coming in for me, a new
Hmm.
vantage point for me, that when Red saw that Tom really did love Liz, it started to humanize him, and that may be why he went so hard. Defective merchandise. Oh, we're done with you. Go away. Just he was intentionally
Trying to
putting
bring
those
him
walls up.
back into the merchandise category.
Exactly, and just trying very hard to dehumanize him in his own mind, so that he didn't.
Mm.
In a way, by doing that to him, he's still protecting Liz because he doesn't want Liz to go back to him. And if he suddenly starts seeing Tom as a human being that might actually love her and might actually try to be better for her,
And
then
and
how's he
also
going to talk Liz out
fear,
of it?
fear, because if Tom comes back and they're back together, what are the chances that his little secret comes out?
There's that
So
too.
yeah, he's like, yeah, maybe you go back out and don't be telling her anything. I know you're good, but I don't know how long you'll be good.
Well, I mean, he killed Sam to keep his secrets. Why wouldn't, I mean, he can't, at this point, he can't kill Tom too. But he does need him to go away. And then that
Yeah,
brings us into, I believe, the
yeah.
next.
There is a funny thing happening in that, not that scene, then one after, when next morning when Tom meets Liz, he doesn't say like, I don't know what you're still doing with Red or whatever. I think that by that time, Tom had formed his theory that Liz is Red's daughter,
Oh yeah.
because he doesn't go on right. The fact that Tom went that Red went to lengths to get him in Dresden, to him is like, okay, I get it. Yeah. So he sounds like he's still angry about last night. Like, that is the comment that a boyfriend makes when daddy found me in the room and I wasn't supposed to be here.
It's exactly what that
And
entire scene was. In my like year and a half, 2-year old daddy gate meta that I've got, that was one of the main scenes that I commented on. I'm like, this was the father finding the boyfriend that he doesn't like and going, "You're not good enough. Go away. Get out of my daughter's room." I know what you're doing. I've been your age before.
exactly,
I've been where
exactly.
you are, and I do not approve.
So this to me, that scene is a tiny little moment there, but to me, it's a little stepping stone. Now Tom knows, and Red knows that Tom loves Liz, and Tom knows that Red is not using Liz. He's actually helping her. But still, they're still there in that moment. Well, he may be your daughter, but you know what? I think he's still a dangerous man, and we see that as we come along. The next time they see each other, well, no, there's a little moment there when Liz had found the picture after they get oh no, Tom gets shot, Red gets shot.
Hmm.
Correct. Red gets shot.
And Liz finds out at that point, cause right before it's when Tom admits that he'd been working for Red, and she goes and has that so nice and so accepting conversation with Red, which she gives him no time to explain. You kind of feel sorry for Red every once in a while, but you also realize that he brings it onto himself by keeping
Mm.
so much from her.
But then Tom and Red had that moment when he could have easily said, "No way, you're bringing that man in there," but he doesn't.
No,
At
he
that
looks at
moment,
her and goes, I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for you." He makes it very clear what his reasoning is, but he doesn't tell her he can die on the street.
yeah, exactly. And I think that in the moment, then they have that great conversation when Tom, and I always feel that there is a second part of that conversation. There is no way that Red just heard that and didn't say anything back. I mean, it's possible, but I doubt it. I think that someday we will see some of this. And he just tell him, I know you're the one who hurt Liz the most. Um, and I think in that moment, you hurt her the most. It's not just about him being in her life. I think it's about the secrets that he's not telling her.
Well,
I think
I
that is what Tom is telling her, telling
yes,
him.
I completely agree with that because you've just seen with Tom that he has, and I've
Clumsy.
talked about this before on my blog and such, in which for Tom, a lot of his relationship with Liz is overcoming this training that he's had, that the job comes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, on and on and on,
Mhm.
and there is no personal life. And he he chose the moment that he chose to tell her about Red was putting her first in front of the job, was putting her first in front of his own safety, was
Mhm.
putting her first in front of everything. And that's the moment I believe that he chose when he talks about right before their
Mhm.
second wedding and says, "I
Mhm.
promised myself I wouldn't lie to you anymore." I think
That's
that's
a
the
moment he
moment.
did.
Yeah, he said, "I'm
Yes,
done. It's
I
all or
agree.
nothing."
Yeah,
And he did. At that point, from that point on, you see him even when he starts like saying something, he's like he'll backtrack because you see he tells Liz at the when Red's in surgery and such, he tells her that
he's a dangerous man.
He's a dangerous man. Red's gonna drown you in the. You're gonna drown. You can't do this. This is dangerous. And then he turns around later, and I think he realized that he was manipulating her. He realized he was falling back on and trying to get her. While he thought Red was not good for her, she still had to make that decision herself. And I think that's why he backtracked as badly as he did by the end of that episode. Is that he was going? I realize what I'm
Yeah.
doing. I'm not. I may be being truthful with you, but I am not being honest with you, and I have to let you make that decision for yourself. And so when he made that decision for him to do that, I think he realized, but you haven't, Reddington, and if you want to be good for her, if you really love her, you will. And right now, you are hurting her the most. I think that at that point, Tom realized he loved her so much that he just wants her to be happy. And if
Mhm.
Reddington being good to her and being willing to tell her the truth and still being in her life, but being willing to make her happy would make her happy, then I mean, because we've seen it since then that
Yeah.
he's helped Red, he's saved Red's life, he's been willing to let jabs pass, again and again and again. We've seen him actually be the bigger man in some situations.
No, I think that they save you in another. But yeah, Red is a father, and I think that he accepts that, and he knew that way before we all did, and
No bigger daddy gator than Tom Keen.
he knew that, and he acted like it. Is like, there's things that I'm going to accept, but he tells her, you're the one who hurts her the most, and it's not by being in her life. It's because, and that is, I think, the backtracking that you solve it for me. That's the backtracking. It's not about you being in her life. It's about you not making the hard choice of telling her stuff. So I had to do it for you.
To Tom at that point, and we'll find out for sure when we find out why Red has been hiding everything from her. I still
Mhm.
think there's that big reveal coming. But to Tom, with what he knows at that point and continuing to know, Red's just choosing to put his own fears in front of
Mhm.
Liz, in front of what Liz needs. Tom's view is always going to be what Liz needs from what he knows of
Mhm.
the situation, what makes her happy. He made a comment in 4A. He says, well, it's not going to affect your happiness, and that's all I care about.
Mhm.
Her being
Yeah.
happy is one of the biggest goals of his life.
Yeah.
And I think if Liz and Agnes were happy for the rest of their lives, Tom Keen would be happy as they can. I mean, that would just be perfection for
Yeah.
him. You
Yeah.
know.
But the interesting point, going back to our list, is that's the point of his second daddy comment when he says, that means that Reddington is your father. And I think in that moment, I didn't read any irony. He just thinks it's her mother, and he says, well, that means Reddington is your father. It's not really a jab to me. I
Right.
think he's really fishing for
Oh,
information.
oh, I
That's
agree.
knows.
I agree. I think that he thinks, in at that point, I 100% think that he thinks Reddington is her father, and that's just kind of his way. Because at this point, he hasn't earned her respect back or her trust back, and he's well aware what an uphill climb this is, and he's very
Hmm.
careful. He's trying to be honest with her without being pushy on things. So he's like, is it possible this is your dad? Let's put that idea out there. Let's test the waters. And if she freaks out at me, we will pull back on this.
And I think that he knows it's the only way Liz learns things that she believes is when she finds them out for herself.
And that is true as
Something
well.
that Red also knows.
I do think he honestly believed that Red was her father at that point. And I think from that point on, he believes that. He knows that she does not believe that. And so he's just going to let it ride. He's going to let it ride until he has
It's
proof.
not his point. It's not his place to comment on what, her father. That is, I think that even Tom not having a father, he understands that that is a relationship that belongs with the two of them.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the reason that in the fall finale he stepped out. And I think that if he ever were to have indisputable facts,
He would say, but
he would take that to her and say, listen, I have this has been presented to me, take this into your own consideration and make your decision. But I think he's done giving opinions on that because they're just conjectures that he has. I mean, that's all he's got at this point. He doesn't have any proof. And so it's a gut feeling.
but I think that his willingness to he did manipulate Red with Agnes.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I think with
hey,
Liz is
now
full okay.
yeah, I mean, great. I got now something I can use against you or for you or use to move you the way I want.
It made me
But
cringe a little. He was willing to use his daughter in that fashion. I'm not gonna
but
lie.
it is, it's a valid thing. The fact that he knows that Red will do anything for Agnes, the fact that he trusts that Red will protect Agnes, that is, that speaks to him knowing. So, and I think that takes us to the last thing in this, as they call in season 2, and I think that then we'll wrap up for this one. It's when he calls him and says, "I can help her disappear," and Red's still like, "Yeah, I can't help you with that." You know where Liz is, so he's lying there, but
But
barely.
the really interesting thing is when he turns to Liz and says, "That was Tom. He wants to take you away. He wants to sail away with you on his boat. But you have to." And I'm not quoting here verbatim, but he basically says, you have to deal with this first, and then if you want to go off with Tom into the sunset, you can. It was such an interesting comment that he made there, because I remember in the season 2 finale going, would he really? Wouldn't he's been putting up a fight for Tom and Liz for ages. If she chose him again, would he basically let her? And I mean, that was a real question that I had, because he told her he would, and I was kind of surprised that he did, and he wasn't exactly thrilled with letting her, but he really didn't have a choice moving forward after that.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting comment that he made to her, and I think at the time it was really just to kind of push back and say, listen, this is what you need to focus on. You can deal with all the Tom issues later. Deal with those after this is dealt with.
But there's also an interesting thing there is that Tom, and I'm sure that Dembe, found a way of filling him in. Tom stayed and defended Red. And we didn't talk about that, but Tom stayed and defended Red. Then he didn't have to do that. He could have just left. That wasn't his battle. And he did stay and defend. And it was Red. It wasn't Liz.
Exactly. Liz was not there. And this is back at the when Red was shot, just to
Yeah.
bring people back onto our train of thought here, because Tessa and I are on the same train of thought right now, but we want to make sure the listeners are as
Yeah, the
well.
rest of them are.
But no, that's an excellent point that we skipped over by accident. That he let Red use his facilities that he was living in. It was, I love
That
how
was his
indignant
home.
he was. He was so indignant about it. What are you doing here? I live here, you know. And this isn't the townhouse that she'd seen him in, that she'd lived with him in. This wasn't an apartment. He was living out of a warehouse. He didn't have anything. He was probably squatting in it. But it was safe. For whatever reason, it was safe, and she brought Red there, and he let him in. And then not only that, but he went out of his, and he made it very clear when Dembe and Kaplan were like, we don't know if we want to give you firearms here. And he said, well, you know what? You're welcome to fight your own battle, and I'll just leave. And
Bass, and that's Dembe and Bass.
yeah.
And Bass ask Dembe, and Dembe says yes. So that is.
Was Bass asking him? I thought it was Kaplan. Kaplan and Dembe were in that conversation. I know Bass was there, but I think it was Dembe and Kaplan.
Maybe.
And so, but yeah, there was one of them said, kind of gave the, I'm not so sure, and I think it was Dembe gave the go ahead.
Dembe gave the go ahead.
And then yes, you're right. He risked his own life to defend Raymond Reddington.
Mm-hmm.
In which he never received a thank you for, by the way. I would just like to point that out. In any format, not even an unspoken one of, well, I'll let such and such slide. It's just like, ugh.
And this is on the basis coming right after a conversation where, even if you're a Tom hater, you gotta admit that this is a guy who goes to Raymond Reddington, who even in the days of drugs and after surgery, he's still a scary man, and says, you know what, I just want to make sure that you understand that when you were talking to me, I was scared, and now I think I am, I'm letting you know that I did tell Liz. So he's owning up to this. Yes, I betrayed you. I told Liz, and I'm out of it. And I think that takes some guts, and I think that in a way it marked another stepping stone in the relationship. I'm telling you what I did. I chose Liz over my job, over my previous commitment to you.
And his own life, potentially, because Tom has made it very clear that he is aware that the fear is what drives people into silence. And that's what he was telling Liz when they were looking for Katerina in season 2. He says it's, that's the tell, is the silence, because he scares them into silence. And I think that Tom had lived under that for years. I mean, he was afraid of him. I imagine that there was a little bit of hero worship going on, and to an extent there still may be. Part of me wonders if Tom covers some of it up with the bravado of the sarcasm and the snark and everything. But you gotta imagine in St. Regis that you were at the top of your game if Raymond Reddington wanted you. And late 20s, Tom was being hired by Red. He was the best of the best coming out of St. Regis, and I think Reddington was probably the best of potential employers. And he probably had a little bit of hero worship going on for this former spy turned rogue going out and making his way in the world. There were such, the spy that never came in out of the cold, the man in the hat, just these stories about him. I imagine Tom had a little bit of hero worship going on, and so he's probably pretty torn in that he's angry because he feels like he puts Liz in danger, but he's also just the way he reacts to him sometimes feels like he wants to respect him.
Yeah. Well, also, really, Red and Tom has so many parallels and things that they have in common that I imagine in a way must sometimes feel even a little uncomfortable. Like, I wonder if this guy can read me as good as I can read him,
Yeah.
or not read me at all, which is scary.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, that wraps up the season 2 for that. So we're going to break here because this has been a little bit of a longer episode than we were expecting. So we're going to turn it into 2 episodes. Not planned, but it'll work because we're planning to put the second episode up, which will be the latter half. It'll be season 3 and 2, or in 4A. Hopefully we'll have that up on Thursday. So instead of Blacklist, yay, you get
We're here.
well,
Analyzing
actually,
two.
it probably will go up on Wednesday because Thursday will be Thanksgiving, so it'll probably go up on Wednesday.
You can prepare your turkey as you listen to us.
Exactly.
Blabbing about Tom and Red.
And it'll be my birthday, so smile for Tom.
Happy birthday in advance.
Yeah, I'm gonna ignore that it happens on that day.
We'll see.
Oh dear. All right,
All
so
right.
we will see you on Wednesday, and we're going to see you then and finish up the episode then. Bye-bye.
Bye.